I would like you to imagine this for once. Let's say you went through a bad breakup, a really bad one, and you felt extremely low and sad after that breakup. Now, usually, like most of us do, after a bad breakup, we go onto Google and try to find about the reasons of why we feel the way we feel, and try to also find out more answers. In the middle of this, let's say you came across a blog that claimed to be a mental health expert blog. And on that blog, you saw a list of symptoms which they claim that if you might continue to feel the way you are, then you will end up having these symptoms. Some of the symptoms said that you might end up having irritability, loss of appetite, sleeplessness, nightmares, and in extreme case, you might end up committing suicide. Now, for once, imagine, in that mental state, how exactly would you feel? How exactly would this entire information make you feel at that time? Would you feel helpless? Would you feel confused? Would you feel scared? That's exactly how most of my clients felt when they first time came to my office, right after reading about all such things available about mental illness and mental health online. With the easy accessibility of information on mental health in today's time, the tendency to have information that is false, misleading, and also creating rumors becomes high. In fact, for once, even if I say that some of those informations are true, then one of the major dangers come from how a reader approaches this information. A lot of readers have shown the tendency to either overestimate what they are going through or either underestimate their own signs and symptoms. Now, from this, I would like to share a very personal example and, in fact, also highlight very own concern that I've had as a mental health expert. So, about a year back, I joined the Instagram family. I was really excited because I was planning to do a research where I wanted to see what are the psychological effects of using Instagram on its users. Now, meanwhile, I was there and I was focusing on my research, I came across a number of accounts that really surprised me. Those accounts were taking up responsibility of disseminating mental health related information across a number of followers. In fact, so many followers that I was amazed to see that these many followers were really with the true right kind of information giving person, then probably results would have been different. Now, after that, my amazement didn't stop that. I was even more surprised to see that these people who were claiming to be sharing the most authentic information on mental health were actually spreading the misinformation, or at least the wrong information. Furthermore, they were doing it under the labels like mental health service providers and mental health advocates, which of course at the surface level were increasing their authenticity, but they weren't truly registered or checked on. Now, after this particular incident, I decided to go on Google, just by sheer curiosity, and typed in to see that what are truly the most authentic mental health Instagram handles that one should follow if they're wanting to seek more right kind of information. I was amazed to see that I roughly got 30 odd accounts that were told that are the best ones to follow. Now, why exactly 30 number isn't the best number and I didn't have a great expression to it? That's because today, currently in India, as of 2021, we have about 400 million social media users, out of which, even if I imagine that 10% of those social media users were disseminating wrong information from their Instagram handles, then that means that almost 40 million accounts are active at this point in time who are spreading wrong information about mental illnesses and mental health. In fact, as a result of these unauthorized, unauthentic, and unreliable sources, there has been serious effects on people's psyches and mental health. In fact, it is far more dangerous because people who are going through content from these platforms either end up having far more stigmatization or stigmatic thoughts about what mental illness is, or if themselves they are going through a mental illness, then they feel far more vulnerable and sometimes weak. Now, this brings me to a very valid question. Are we all trying to fight stigma, or are we actually the creators of stigma through social media platforms? Now, while I put this question forward, let me simplify it a bit. A psychology thought is quite famous, and in fact, it's said a lot of times when we study psychology. And it says that reality is based on our own individual perception. And our perception is based on the information that we get from our environment. Now just imagine that the environment from where we are getting maximum information, at least in the area of mental health, are these various social media platforms. Just imagine the amount of impact that these kind of misleading information can have on so many people out there. And what kind of reality are they forming about what really mental illnesses are like? I will make it easy for all of you and give you two researches which actually sound super interesting and actually made me even more intrigued to work in the area of cyberbullying. One of those were the works of Gertner in 2002 along with other researchers. He gave this cultivation theory and tried to apply it in order to study the behaviors of humans. He found out that those people who actually live through these platforms, simply saying that they understand their lives' realities through whatever these platforms give in the form of information, that is what becomes their ultimate truth and reality in real life. Now imagine that in the current scenario, the chances for you to actually go and meet somebody who is actually going through a mental illness are quite low. In fact, that's quite true for most of us, because some of us aren't that privileged to actually see what mental illness really feels like and what exactly the journey is like. Therefore, most of us highly rely on sources like these to understand about what exactly mental health and mental illness is. Now, depending on these media platforms, I cannot forget how on media platforms mental illnesses are portrayed. Often they are portrayed as people who are either criminals or are murderers or are vindictive or are trying to find out vengeance, and that's about it. In fact, sometimes when I try to find out what else can they be doing apart from this in the media platform, it's very hard to see that they have been given any other thing that they are seeking from life. Now let's just pause there for a bit and take on another stride of what Albert Bandura found through his social learning theory. Albert Bandura, through his social learning theory, again did a very interesting experiment, rather a research. He said that the people or these media platforms through which people get their information have the power to reinforce certain social conventions about mental health and also about how people who have mental illness should be treated. Now, if I consider that and also consider what cultivation theory had to say, that our reality is built on that, then it's quite a scary road. Why? Because whenever I switch on a television, I always see that always a villain in the movie or a criminal on the news channel is always shown to have some kind of psychopathic issue, or is either shown as a psychopath. Or some people who have mental illnesses are actually shown as people who are either devils whose ultimate goal is destruction, vengeance and death, as if they have nothing else to do in life but just do this. What kind of odd reality are we all creating? What kind of emotions are we creating in our audiences? What kind of content are we really producing? Now this brings us to some very, very important and valid questions. But before I say that, there's a thought that comes in my mind, and I actually got it from one of the researchers from Rose and Philo. Rose and Philo actually did a very interesting research. from which they gave a very, very powerful statement. In fact, when I speak about those statements, I actually legit get goosebumps in my hands. They said that the media representations of what mental illnesses are really like have a potential to override the already existing notions that we have about who exactly these mentally ill people are and how exactly it is to be with them. So let's say that even if you have a very positive idea about what mental illnesses are or what people who face them are really going through or are as a person, if you constantly keep watching such media content or keep reading misinformation, you will ultimately start seeing it as a reality. Are we really understanding how dangerously we are moving ahead to an area or to an era where there's more confusion and more dissemination of mental health information, where there's no check or authenticity check on what we are taking inside our realities? Now, pausing there comes a big question. A very big question is, what are the roles and responsibility of all of us right here? What are the roles and responsibility of all of us as readers of these contents? What are the roles and responsibilities of you and me as social media content creators? What are the roles and responsibility, I may ask, about various media houses? And what are the roles and responsibilities of mental health workers like me? The answer is quite simple. In fact, quite straightforward. As social media content creators and media house experts or even media creators, we should stop stigmatizing words and issues which are related to mental health and mental illnesses. We should stop portraying every criminal as always having some kind of mental illness, or trying to portray every villain as having some kind of traumatic past and always trying to do something that is in relation with creating more negative feedbacks and negative ideas about what mental illness is or what a mentally ill person looks like. We should stop actually propagating and relating various mental disorders through our media platforms and trying to always give them a sexist angle. For instance, I usually see that in a lot of portrayals of media, we have seen already in a lot of movies that men are portrayed as somebody who've always had some childhood trauma, as a result of which they end up having psychosis or some childhood traumatic mind and memories. On the other side, usually in movies and at other social media platforms, I see that women are portrayed as those who are oppressed, and due to constant oppression, they end up having sexual dysfunctional disorders. I think it's time that we should take some responsibility of the kind of information that we are portraying. We should stop propagating and oversimplifying celebrity suicides the way we have done in past. We should stop propagating and glorifying misinformation in the same direction. We should stop and always read the kind of content that we are forwarding across our friends and families, or we are putting it across our social media handles. And finally, we should stop self-diagnosing ourselves, because self-diagnosis is not the right thing, and diagnosis is a thing, or rather, diagnosis is a privilege that comes with a degree, and that privilege is only in the hand of a mental health expert. Thank you so much.